Hilchos Yeseda Torah Perek Dalid Halacha Aleph. In the previous Perek, we learned about the four Yesedas, and in this Perek, we're going to learn about all the matter of this world, how it comes from and how it's connected to the four Yesedas. Arba Gufim Halalu, these four bodies, Shehim Eish V'Ruach Umayim V'Eretz, which are fire, wind, water, and earth, Heim Yesedas Kol Anavraim Lamata Min Arakia. They are the fundamental elements of all of the creations that are beneath the sky. V'chol sheyiyah, and anything that exists, me'adam, u'mebehema, v'oif, v'remes, v'dog, v'tzemach, u'mateches, v'avonim tevis, u'margolies, u'shar avnei binyan, v'harim, v'gushe offer, and all things that exists, from man, animals, birds, crawling creatures, fish, plants, metals, precious stones, pearls, and all other building stones and mountains or lumps of earth, Hakal, all of them, Goman, their matter, Mechuber is a combination, Ma'arba Yesedas Alalu, of these four Yesedas. So Nimtzu, it comes out that Kol HaGufim Shalamatim and Arakia, that all bodies that are below the sky, Chutz Ma'arba Yesedas Elu, except for these four Yesedas, all of the other things, Mechubarim, they are combined, Migoylim V'tzura, from matter and a form, V'goylim Shalahem, and their matter, Mechuber is combined, and it's constructed from Me'arba Yesedas Elu, these four Yesedas. Aval, however, Kol Echad Ma'arba HaYesedas, each one of the four Yesedas themselves, Eine Mechuber Elo Megoylim V'tzura Bolvad. They themselves are only a combination of matter and form alone. However, their matter is not a combination of the four Yesedas. Halacha Beis, here we'll learn about the very basics of how everything is connected to the Daled Yesedas. Derech ha'esh v'aruach, it's the manner of fire and wind. Lies ma'alacham, that the direction that they go in is mimata, from below, mitabar ha'aretz, from the depth of the earth, lemailo, upwards, klape rekia, towards the sky, v'derech hamayim v'aretz, and it's the direction of water and earth. Lies ma'alacham mitachas ha'rekia, that their direction should be from going from below the sky, lamata downwards, ad la'emsa, to the middle. She'emsa ha'rekia, hu amata she'ein lamata mimenu. The middle of the sky is the lowest possible place that exists. Ve'ein hiluchim loy bedaitam v'loy becheftzam. And their direction of movement, it's not by their knowledge or by their desire. Elaminig shenikba behen, rather it's a behavior that was set in them, v'teva shenitba behem, and a nature that was set in them. More about their nature. Teva eish, the nature of fire is cham v'yavish, it's hot and dry. V'ukal mekulam, and it's the lightest of all. V'aruach, and the wind, cham v'lach, is warm and wet. V'amayim, and the waters, karim v'lachim, are cold and wet. V'aretz, and the earth, yavesha v'kara, is dry and cold. V'ikveda mekulam, and it's the heaviest of all of them. V'amayim kalim imena, and the waters are lighter than the earth. Lefichach, therefore, nimsayim l'maylo al aretz, that's why they are found above, on top of the earth. V'ruach kalmen amayim, and the wind is lighter than the water. Lefichach, therefore, hu merachef al pnei amayim, it hovers on the water. V'eish kalmen aruach, and the fire is lighter than the wind. Continuing and explaining how this connects to all objects in the world. Umipnei sheim, you say this l'chol gufim shetachas harakia, because they are the foundations of all bodies under the sky. Yimatze kol guf v'guf me'adam u'behema v'chaya v'oif v'dog v'tzemach u'mateches v'evan. So you'll find that each and every body, from a person, animals, beasts, birds, fish, plants, metals, and stones, that Golmai, its matter, mechuber, is combined me'esh v'ruach u'mayim v'offer, from all four, fire, wind, water, and earth. V'arbatim yisarvu b'yachad, and all four of them mix together. V'yishtanu kol echad mehem be'esa erev, and each of them changes in this mixture. Achi motzei ha'mechuber ma'arbatan, to the extent that it's found that all these things that are a combination of these four Yesedas, ein adayim le'echad mehem k'shehul vadeh, it's not similar to any one of the four Yesedas when that Yesed is alone. Ve'ein b'ma'erev mehen afilu chilik echad, shehu eish b'fnei atzmai, oy mayim b'fnei atzmai, oy eretz b'fnei atzma, oy ruach b'fnei atzma. And in the matter that's mixed together to make this item, you won't be able to find even one portion that's just fire alone, or water alone, or earth alone, or wind alone. But rather everything changed and now became one entity. That's one new thing. Continuing with seeing how this now affects every object. And each and every body that is a combination from these four Yesedas, but you'll find in it kar v'chaim leach v'yevish. You're going to find cold and hot, wet and dryness ke'echad as one. However, there are bodies among them that you'll find in them a stronger concentration from fire, for example, living things that have a soul. Therefore you find in them much more the quality of heat. V'yesh men gufen sheyeh behen chaska miyisei haaretz, and then there are bodies that you'll find in them a stronger concentration from the yisei of earth, k'maya avonim, like stones. Lefichach yer behem hayevish harbe. Therefore, will be seen in them much more the dryness. V'yesh men gufen sheyeh behen chaska miyisei mayim, and then there are bodies that by them you have a stronger concentration from the yisei of water. Lefichach yer behem haleach yaser. Therefore, you're going to find by them more wetness. Continuing with this idea, and it's in this manner that yimatzei guf cham yeser meguf acher cham. You'll find one warm body that's even warmer than another warm body. V'guf yavish yaser meguf acher yavish, and one dry body that's drier than another body. V'chein yimatzei gufim, so too you'll find bodies she'er behen aker belvad. You'll find in them only coldness. V'gufim, and then there are bodies yer behem haleach belvad. You'll only see in them wetness. V'gufim yer behen aker v'ayevish ke'echad b'shava, and then you'll have bodies that you'll find in them both cold and dryness as one equally. Or coldness and wetness equally as one. Or the heat and the dryness equally as one. Or the heat and the wetness equally as one. And this is Lefi Rev HaYesed, according to the majority of the Yesed, Shahaya Be'ikar HaTarevis, that was in the main part of the mixture. So then Yera Maisa Esei Yesed, you'll see the deeds of that Yesed, V'tiva, in its nature, Baguf HaMa'erev, and the body that's mixed of them. Halacha Gimel, v'chol ha'mechuber ma'arba Yesedus elu, and every object that's a combination of these four Yesedus, which is every object in the world, who nifrid b'seif, at the end it decomposes. Yeshu nifrid la'achar yomim achadim. There are objects that decompose after a few days. V'yeshu nifrid la'achar shonim rabis, and then there are objects that only decompose after many years. V'chol shenitzchaber mehem efshar shelo yiparid lehen, and any object, which is all objects in the world, that is combined from them, it's not possible that it shouldn't decompose into them. Afilu hazav idem. Even gold and ruby, it's not possible that it won't decompose and return to its fundamental elements. And part of it will return to fire, and part of it to water, and part of it to wind, and part of it to the earth. Halacha Daled. The Rambam addresses a question. Since everything that decomposes is going to separate into these four Yesedus, why was it said to Adam, that you're going to return to dust? He's supposed to return to all four Yesedus. And the answer is, because the main part that he consists of is offer. Another point about the way it decomposes, not everything that decomposes will immediately decompose to the four Yesedus. Rather, is going to decompose and come something else, and one thing to another thing. At the end of everything, it will return to the Yesedus. And it comes out that everything eventually returns to its original state. Halacha Hey, here the Rambam will teach how the four Yesedus interact with one another. Arba Yesedus Eilu, these four Yesedus, Mishtanim Zelazeh Tomid, they're constantly changing into one another. B'chol Yom u'B'chol Shah, every day and every hour. Miktsasan, but it's part of them. Loi kol gufim, not their entire body. Ketzad, how is this? Miktsas haaretz hakreva min hamayim, a little bit of the earth that's close to the water. Mishtanes umispereres v'nasas mayim. It changes and it dissolves and it becomes water. V'chein miktsas hamayim hasmuchim l'ruach. So too a little of the water that's close to the wind. Mishtanen umismasmasin v'heven ruach. They change and evaporate and become wind. V'chein haruach, and so too the wind. Miktsasei hasamach le'eish, the little bit of it that's close to the fire. Mishtana umischelel v'nasa eish. It also changes and turns into fire. V'cheina eish, and so to the fire. Miktsasa hasamach l'ruach, the little bit of it that's close to the wind. Mischelel mishtana umiskanes v'nasa ruach. It also changes and contracts and becomes wind. V'chein haruach, and so to the wind. Miktsasei hasamach l'mayim, the part of it that's close to the water. Mishtana umiskanes v'nasa mayim. It changes and it contracts and it becomes water. V'chein hamayim, and so to the water. Miktsasei hasamach la'aretz, the part of it that's close to the earth. Mishtana umiskanes v'nasa aretz. It changes and it contracts and it becomes earth. V'shin, this change ma'at is little by little. Ulefi erech hayamim, and it's over a long course of time. V'ein kol hayesid mishtana, and the whole Yesed will not change to the extent that all the water will become ruach, wind, ruach eish, or all the wind will become fire. Because it's impossible possible for any of these four Yesodis to stop existing. But rather, a little bit will change from fire to wind, and a little bit will change from wind to fire. And so too, between each one and the other, you'll find the change among the four of them. And this is a non-stop, continuous cycle that continues forever. Halacha Vav, here the Rambam explains what causes the four Yesodis to change the way they do. This change is caused and happens b'svivas hagalgal, because of the turning of the galgal, of the spheres. And it's because it's turning that Yischaber Arbartan, that the four Yesodis combine, via mehen shar golmei b'nei adam, and that as a result, there's all other forms of matter of people, v'nefesh chaya, and living animals, tzemach, plants, v'evan, and stones, u'mateches, and metals. So that's in regards to the matter. What about the form? V'akel, and Hashem, noisen l'chol goylam v'goylam, He gives each and every body tzura ru'uya loy, the form that's appropriate for it. And He does this al yedei malach ha'asiri, through the 10th malach, which is the lowest of the 10, She Atzura HaNikras Ishim, which is the tzura that is called Ishim. Halacha Zayin, now that we learned that everything has a goylem and a tzura, the Rambam explains, Lo'elam ein atorei goylem b'loi tzura, tzura b'loi goylem. You can never see with your eye matter without a form or form without matter. Elaleva adam hu shemechalik gufa nimtza b'daitei v'yedeya shu mechuber migoylem v'tzura. It's just that the heart of a person is able to separate, in a person's mind, he's able to separate and know that any existing body is a combination of matter and a form. Furthermore, v'yedea, a person knows that there are two types of matter. Sheyeshem gufim shegolmom mechuber ma'arba'as haYesodis. There are bodies that their matter is a combination of the four Yesodis, which is all objects in the world. V'gufim, and then there are bodies which are the four Yesodis themselves, shegolmom pashut, that their matter is simple. Ve'ein mechuber megoylem acher, and it doesn't consist of any other goylem at all, except for the actual goylem itself, which is any one of the four Yesodis. Furthermore, vatsuris she'ein lem goylem, and the forms that don't have any matter, which refers to the malachim, einam nirim la'ayin, they're not seen by the eye at all. Unlike the previous objects that a person could see physically, and they just need their mind to understand more about them, these cannot be seen by the eye. Ela be'ein halev hein yiduin, they're known with the eye of the heart. Just like we know the existence of Hashem, even though we don't see Him with our eyes. Halacha Ches, now the Rambam teaches us what is the form of a person. Nefesh kol basar, the soul of all living things, hitzurase, that's its tzura, shenasan le'akel, that Hashem gave it. So in other words, the fact that an animal is alive, being alive is its tzura, but that's not how it is by a person. V'adas ha'yesera, hamatsuya benafshe shel adam, the extra element of das that's found in the nefesh of a person, hi tzura sa'adam hasholim b'daitoi, that is the tzura of a person that's perfect in his knowledge. V'al tzura zu ne'emar b'Torah, and it's about this form that it says in the Torah, nasa adam b'tzalmenu kidmuseinu. That's the tzelm that's referring to. Kalemer, meaning to say, shetia leitzur hayadas umasegas hadeis. You should have a form that understands and grasps the deis she'ein lehem goylem, that don't have a goylem, that they are only form without matter. Komei malachim, like the malachim, she'im tzura b'lei goylem, that they are form without matter. To the extent that a person now becomes similar to them. And now he addresses what's not the form of a person. He is not speaking about the form that a person could see with his eyes, which is which is the mouth, the nose, the cheeks, and the other parts of the body that have a structure. Shazu toyar shma, because that's named toyar. Now he addresses a second mistake. It's not either the life that's found by every living being, with which a person eats and drinks and reproduces and feels and thinks. Ella, rather, hadeya, it is the knowledge, shehitzuras nefesh, which is the tzura, which is the form of the nefesh. Uvitzuras nefesh akasav medaber, and it's about this tzura of the nefesh that the pasuk is talking about when it says bitzalmenu kidmuseinu. And the Rambam concludes the halacha, upamim rabbis tikara zei satzura nefesh v'ruach. Many times this tzura will be called with the name nefesh and ruach. Ulafichach, therefore, tzarech lihizar b'shmeisan. You have to be careful with their names, shalita adam bahen, so that a person doesn't make a mistake about them, about what's being spoken about. V'chol shem v'shem yilamid me'inyanei. And each and every name, you can understand what it's referring to from the context of where it's said. Halacha tes, ein tzuras hanefesh azeis. This tzuras hanefesh that we spoke about, which is the day on the person, it's not muchuberes menei yesodis. It's not combined from the Yesodis, Kadesha Departlehem, and in order that it should then decompose into them. The Eina Mekayach Neshama, it doesn't either come from the Neshama referring to the person being alive versus not being alive, Achite Tzrichel Neshama, so that it should therefore need the Neshama, Kamesha Neshama Tzrichel Aguf, the way the Neshama needs the body. But rather, it's from Hashem, from heaven. Therefore, when a person's body, which is made from the Yesodis, decomposes, and then the Neshama gets lost, the Neshama referring to a person being alive versus not being alive, because life is only found with the body, and it needs the body, for all of its deeds. So at that time, this tzura, this day Yesera, will not stop existing, because it does not need the Neshama for what it does. But rather it knows and it grasps the entities which are the malachim that are separate from any matter, and it knows the creator of everything, and it stays forever, eternally. This is what Shlomo Melech said in his wisdom, that the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the Ruach, referring to this day, Tashuv Elokim Asher Nesana, will return to Hashem, who is the one who gave it. Halacha Yud, Kol Hadvarim Ha'elu, all of these things, Shedibarnu Be'inyan Zeh, that we spoke about in this matter, which is in the last two prakim, Kemarid Lihim, they're like a drop in a bucket, Udvarim Amukim Him, and they are very deep matters. Aval, however, Einam Ke'inyan Oimek Perek Rishon V'Sheni, they're not as deep as the Inyan in the first and second Perek. Ubeir kol elu advarim shebe Perek Shlishi urevi hu anikra Maisa Bereshis. The explanation of all the matters in Perek Shlishi and Revi is what's called Maisa Bereshis. V'kach tzivu hachachamim harishonim. This is what the chachamim harishonim instructed. She'ein darshan badvar me'elu barabim. You're not allowed to teach these things in public. Ela la'adam echad madim dvar me'elu. Rather, you only inform these things to one person, umalamden esan, and we teach them. Halacha Yud Aleph, Uma bein inyan Maisa Merkava le'inyan Maisa Bereshis. What is the difference between Maisa Merkava and Maisa Bereshis? So what's the difference between what we learned in the first two progim and what we learned in the last two progim? She'inyan Maisa Merkava afilu le'echad ein darshan by. Because in regards to Maisa Merkava, we don't even teach it to one person. Elim kin hayachacham umevim midaita. It's only that if he is very wise and understands on his own, so then Maisim le Rashi Prakim, we teach him just the general points. V'inyan Maisa Bereshis. However, when it comes to Maisa Bereshis, so then melamden eisa liyachad. Then you could teach it to an individual, afal pi she'ein mevin eisa midaita, even though he's not able to understand it on his own. And we inform him everything that he's able to understand in these matters. And why don't we teach Maisa Bereshis to the public? Because not every person has broad enough das lahasig in order to grasp and comprehend Perish Ubeir Kol Advarim Al Boryan, the meaning and explanation of all of these things in a proper way. Halacha Yud Beis, the Rambam now teaches us the importance of these first four prakim. Bizman she'adam is beinim badvarim ha'elu. When a person thinks about these matters, umakir kol habruim, and he recognizes all the creations, mi malach v'galgal v'adam chayetze b'y, from a malach and a galgal and a person and others, and he sees the wisdom of Hashem in all the formations and all the creations. It adds to a person's love of Hashem. His nefesh will thirst and his flesh will long to love Hashem. And he'll be in fear and awe because of his lowliness and smallness and insignificance, when he compares himself to one of these holy and large bodies. And certainly when he compares himself to one of these pure forms that are removed from matter, that didn't combine with matter whatsoever. And he'll find himself that he is like a vessel full of embarrassment, and shame, empty and lacking. Halacha Yud Gimel, V'inyanei arba prakim elu, the matters that are discussed in these four prakim, shebechamesh mitzvahs elu, that are in these five mitzvahs, of Anoichi Layilacha, Achtas Hashem, Avas Hashem, and Yiras Hashem, Heim shechachamim harishenim kairin eisei, this is what the chachamim harishenim call pardis. K'meisha Amru, as they said, arba nichnasu la pardis, four entered into the pardis. Va'afal pisha gedeli Yisrael hayu, v'chachamim gedelim hayu, and even though they were gedeli Yisrael and tremendous chachamim, loy kulam hayu ben koyach leida ulahasik kol advarim al buryan. Not all of them had the strength to know and comprehend all the matters properly. Vani Eimer, and I say, says the Rambam, she'ein roya l'tayel bepardes, that is not proper for a person to stroll in the pardes, elimishin ismali krese, lechem ubasar, except someone who filled their belly with bread and meat. V'lechem ubasar, and bread and meat, in this context too, is leida ha'asar v'ha'mutar, to know what is asar and what is mutar, v'chayetze behem, and similarly, mishara mitzvahs from the other mitzvahs, v'afal pisha dvarim elu dover katan karu eisin chachamim, even though these matters of asar and mutar, the chachamim called it a davar katan, a small thing. Sharei amru chachamim, for the chachamim said davar gadol, a big thing, that's ma'aser merkava. The davar katan, a small thing, that's havayas of the Abaye v'Rava. Those are the debates of Abaye and Rava. Afal pichein, nevertheless, ruin ein lakdimam, it is proper to learn them first. Shein meyashvim daite shel adam chila, because they settle a person's mind first. And furthermore, they are the tremendous good that Hashem gave for the settling of this world, in order that a person should acquire chaya ilam haba. And these are things that everyone is able to know. Katan v'gadol, someone small, someone big, ish v'isha, a man or a woman, ba'al lev rachav u'ba'al lev katzar. Whether a person is a ba'al lev, which is broad, or a ba'al lev, which is more limited.